YouTube, what's going on? This is the AK, Mr. 530, better known as the Atheist Killa, the most dominant Christian apologist online. I've been MIA for a little bit, but I'm back to making videos. Tonight I'm going to make a video about an exchange I had with a semi-prominent Christian apologist named TENBRUGGENCATE. Without further ado, let's get into this. A few months ago, I had a discussion with a Christian apologist by the name of TENBRUGGENCATE. I confronted him with the Eliot argument and was curious to hear his thoughts. Prior to our dialogue, I actually felt that he had a decent grasp on logic and philosophy. Still, to this day, I believe much of his work in the area of presuppositionalism is very strong. So let's get into what exactly happened. Now, normally, I'm used to people either agreeing that the Eliot argument is valid or a person who thinks it's flawed trying to defeat it. However, what Sai did was something completely new and something I had never encountered. It was a first, and it made me take a step back and really think for a few days about the message he was trying to convey. I had to let it marinate in my system. The first thing he did was grant the Eliot argument was sound and valid and that all of its premises were actually true and correct. Then he said because of that the Eliot argument was indeed self-refuting. He said because the conclusion of the argument and all of its premises were true that it becomes self-refuting. Now at this point you may be asking yourself, how can an argument be both sound and valid and also be self-refuting? This was essentially the same question that I was asking. Because would it not be true that if you made such a claim you would be facing the law of non-contradiction? An argument cannot be both self-refuting and also be sound and valid. So I told Sai that he needed to pick one stance or the other. Either try to defeat the argument and say it's flawed, or admit that it's sound and valid. He again stated that he granted all my premises were true, but he also continued the same line of reasoning that the argument becomes self-refuting once a person grants this. The problem was that he never sufficiently defended his stance, but just continually made the same nonsensical, baseless assertions, and he refused to pick a position. After going back and forth with him multiple times and hoping he would understand this elementary logic fail, I decided to leave the issue alone because essentially we were at a stalemate. He had given me what I wanted. He had admitted that the argument was sound and valid. He just was making an error in logic about what it meant after such a conclusion was reached. So then I decided to pursue him from another angle, and I asked him how the argument becomes self-refuting once you grant it to be sound and valid. The following were 3 points that I sent him in an email. Number 1. You already admitted that the Eliot argument was sound and valid, and that was what I really wanted from you, Sai, so thank you very much. Number 2. If the argument is sound and valid, which you admitted, then that means the conclusion of the argument is also true. If the conclusion is true, then I have proven that all atheists are irrational, illogical, and have no evidence for their position. Therefore, the argument itself cannot be meaningless because such a conclusion and statement is very powerful all into itself. He then tried to tell me that the argument was self-refuting because once it is granted and you prove atheists are irrational, illogical, then it becomes irrational and illogical of me to continually engage with them. Excuse me, Sai? This is what you meant when you said the argument was self-refuting? You cannot be serious. Here's the problem, Sai, my baby. After proving someone is irrational and illogical for holding a certain position, it is not therefore irrational and illogical to continually engage with that person. Why? Because it could be said that later down the line in that person's life, in steps 2, 3, 4, or 5, or during later conversations with them, after the Eliot argument has been proven, that then you could help that person find truth, reason, logic, understanding, Jesus, God, etc., at which point they would no longer be irrational and illogical for their position that they held. And neither would I for getting them to such a point. Therefore, the argument would not be self-refuting, and I would not be irrational and illogical for continually engaging with someone who I proved had an illogical stance. Atheists are not bound to their atheism, Sai. It's a chosen position that can be changed or switched. It's not like it's an incurable mental handicap. It's a worldview that can be changed. So I would not be flawed in showing atheists that their current chosen position makes them flawed. So in hope that at some future date they are able to change that selected position. If it were some incurable mental handicap that could not be changed, then it would be true that I would be creating a self-refuting argument. For example, that person could not have valid thoughts because after you prove this, there's nowhere else to go with them. But this is not the same as atheism or the Elliott argument. Atheists can change their worldview, so showing them it's flawed is not self-refuting. It's just one step of the process of getting them to the ultimate further goal. My final point in regards to my Mr. TENBRUGGENCATE exchange didn't actually occur to me until much later. Those of you who know Psy know that he does some great work in the field of presuppositionalism, basically showing that without God, a person cannot know anything, which I agree with, by the way, wholeheartedly, and have actually designed my own formal argument for. However, here's the point. He cannot grant the Elliott argument sound and valid and then say it's also self-refuting to continually engage with someone who you have proven holds an irrational and illogical position. Why? Because his presuppositionalism does the exact same thing. He claims that without God you cannot know anything. Atheists are without God, so proving his argument valid to them would be self-defeating, because continually engaging with someone who you have proven cannot know anything must also be self-refuting. You see the problem, Si? So in conclusion, we see that I, the AK Atheist Killa, wins again. This time I defeated a theist, something I normally do not like to do. But I had much higher hopes for this individual, and turns out that they have a flawed logical thought process. And Mr. TENBRUGGENCATE is not the sharpest tool in the shed. If Psy would ever like to engage with me in a live real-time public text debate on the topic of why T can be both valid and also self-refuting, I'd be more than happy to destroy him and oblige him with such a debate. I'm the Atheist Killa, man. Destroying, defeating, crushing, demolishing atheism worldwide. Don't forget to stop by Blue House Apologetic Society or COL Creationism and the Origin of Life on Facebook. I see y'all soon, man. I'm out of here, the AK. Peace!